This episode of Talking Sales is sponsored by the authors of the new page-turning sales novel, The Wentworth Prospect. In the words of one reviewer, it's B2B sales mastery delivered in an ingenious, engaging, and hugely entertaining way. Get it now at your favourite book retailer.
Welcome back, everybody. And again, I've got Dave Brock. G'day, Dave.
It's always such a pleasure being with you, John. I hope you and your audience haven't gotten sick of me yet.
Not at all. I could do this every week for the next 3 years and still not get sick of it. Love what you say. Love your history and experience, and it's really good value. And to that end, in reading your book, you put a lot of emphasis on the importance of coaching. And I gel with that. Nearly every organization I go into, the sales managers end up spending a lot of their time managing and managing up, managing down, and managing spreadsheets and pipelines and all that sort of stuff. And occasionally they get to do a little bit of coaching. And when I look at that little bit of coaching, often it's not really effective coaching. And yet I think, and I know my friend Tony Hughes says this, that the sales manager tends to be the weak link in the revenue chain for this reason. So I want to talk about coaching. Tell me, what does coaching mean to you from a sales manager's point of view? And let's talk through some lessons or some ideas and some suggestions for sales managers to really improve this aspect of their role.
Yeah, I think coaching is something that we talk a lot about, but we really don't pay enough serious attention to it. And we don't equip managers with how to coach, when to coach, how to find the time to coach, and so on and so forth. But before we do this, I think you have to take one step back and say, what is the sales manager's job? And the sales manager's job is to maximize the performance of each individual on her team. Then you say, well, what do I do? Well, as a sales manager, I can leverage a lot of resources in my organization to help me do that. So I might leverage sales enablement for training, for tools, for processes. I might leverage marketing for content and programs and so on and so forth. So those are some of the things that I do to help maximize the performance of the team. But then now, as sales manager, my job is to say, how do I maximize John's performance? Or how do I maximize Dave's performance? Or so on and so forth. And they're different individuals. And what we have to do is we have to say, really, where's John at? Where does John need to be? And how do I get John to that point? Or likewise with Dave, and so on and so forth. And I think that's where coaching is different. Coaching is, for the most part, there are a few exceptions, is focused on the performance of an individual, where things like most of our sales enablement programs are focused on making a difference for the organization. You need both to work. One without the other doesn't work, but you need both to work. So that's the first thing. The second thing that we find managers doing is, how do I find the time to coach? Let's say I know I need to coach. Let's say I want to coach. But how do I find the time? And it was interesting, a number of years ago, as we started talking to managers, we found this really strange way that they looked at coaching. They looked at, there's the business management stuff I have to do, deal reviews, pipeline reviews, forecast reviews, all that sort of stuff to know that we're going to hit our numbers. Then there's coaching. And we found managers actually say, I have to schedule a coaching session. And they were always scheduling coaching sessions. Well, when the going got tough, guess what got canceled?
Yep. Absolutely. Seen it so many times.
Yeah, it was a coaching session. And so what we said is, how do we integrate coaching into every interaction we have with a salesperson? So we're doing deal reviews every week. We may be doing pipeline reviews every other week or once a month or things like that. We may be doing all those business management functions. What if I tried killing two birds with one stone? What if I used that to understand where we are from a business point of view, and I use that as a coaching opportunity to improve the salesperson's ability to execute and drive their performance to higher levels? And that ended up being a bit of magic. The other thing is it had a really relevant context, is kind of coaching in isolation by itself. John, you need to get better at prospecting. Doesn't have the impact that, let's look at what you're doing to develop your funnel and find new opportunities, which is prospecting. What are you doing? And here's how can I coach you to become better and much more effective and impactful in doing that? So we found that we magnified the impact of coaching by associating it with the business function that we were doing, and so on. So that was kind of one of the first breakthroughs.
I agree. That's to me the biggest issue I've had in working with organisations is helping the salesperson find the time. And I agree. Associate it with business activities, and they have got dialogue with their salespeople all the time. So the next issue I've come across, and you say whether you agree with this, a lot of sales managers have never really developed a good skill to coach. Right? They need to be coached on how to be a good coach, in my experience.
Well, one is managers need coaching from their managers just as well as their people need coaching. And I'm hired to coach CEOs and boards of directors because they need coaching as well. We need it all the way through the organization. But the thing is how do I coach? And here people haven't been trained really well in what coaching is. And I really like thinking of coaching as a shared learning experience of how I as a manager or you as a manager and me as a salesperson, how we grow together, but how you help me become better at it. And you think of really how people learn the most. And so we look at there really a couple fundamental coaching techniques. One is called non-directive coaching, and the other is called directive coaching.
Yep.
Directive coaching is do this.
Yep. Tell them what to do. Yep.
Yeah. But we all know, how much do we learn if all we do is what our managers tell us to do? I go do what you told me to do, John, and I say, okay, John, what's next? Non-directive coaching is that piece where it says, what if you did this? Or have you considered this? It's getting the person to think about how they might change, what might be more effective, and so on and so forth, and how to discover and learn for themselves about alternatives that they might approach. And so that's the non-directive approach. And I think a lot of people, where I differ from a lot of the coaching experts, is a lot of the coaching experts say you have to use non-directive coaching all the time. And I find realistically, you have to use non-directive and directive coaching. Let's say you and I were in a car, you were driving at 100 kilometers per hour and you're headed straight for a telephone pole. I don't want to coach you and saying,
How do you feel about this? You think you need to think about what you're doing right now? No, turn the wheel.
Yeah, what I want to do is I want to get very directive. Hit the brake, turn the wheel, do it right now or we'll die. And also, so there are times, I think the best coaches I see are the ones that use these techniques together, but in the right context and in the right situation. There's some times where we are more helpful to the person by telling them what to do. There are some times where we learn. I think we need to be more biased towards the non-directive coaching, but we have to have a holistic approach to how we do this.
I think you're right. And if you look at sport's a good way to look at it. You know, a football coach will do a lot of the non-directive coaching, but you know, when you're not kicking the football the right way or whatever it is, hey, here, let me demonstrate, or get Joe Boggs to come in. Think about this. How are you dropping the ball? How are you doing this? Whatever. And now go away and then have a go now. Now, how did that feel? Now you can get into the non-directive thing, you know, and go through the non-directive type thing. Totally agree. The other thing that most sales managers used to be a salesperson, and we all know a lot of really successful salespeople struggle a little bit when they get into sales management because they want to tell everybody. So they often get very directive. Right. So the one thing that I say is coaching of salespeople, a lot of similarities with the way you should sell. You should sell by asking questions, right? You have to do a lot more time asking questions and listening and selling. So coaching, really that same thing, particularly the non-directive coaching that you were talking about, which is where you should spend most of your time. Well, so just get them to think, you're selling to this person, you're helping this person, like you helped a customer, you're helping the salesperson.
And that's such a fabulous insight. You know, typically in selling, we go through something called a discovery process. In that discovery process, we're helping the customer learn what they might be looking for and how they might make this decision. So we're that discovery process is really not us understanding their needs, but it's helping the customer discover as well.
By asking questions.
If we're really great as salespeople in doing that, we have the potential of applying exactly that same skill, because what we want the salesperson to do is discover, to learn and discover about how they, you know, in the customer case, it's how they solve their problems. In the salesperson's case, it may be how they're solving their problems or how they become better performers. The other thing you said back when you made the football coach example, which is also another important aspect of coaching that I think we overlook, is the personal example we as managers set. My dad always had this saying, do as I say, not as I do. But the real important thing is salespeople look to their managers as role models. And they look to their leader. Everybody looks to their leaders as role models. So we have to start modeling the behaviors that we expect our salespeople to do. So if we expect our salespeople, one, to care about their customers, to be really interested in them, to ask discovery questions, to help the customer to learn, we have to model that same behavior in our behavior towards them.
Let me tell you a little story that related to this. I was working with a sales manager. Well, the sales director said, "Can you work with the sales manager and help him learn how to coach, etc." So I said, "All right, I'll sit in some of the meetings." So in some of these meetings, which were, pipeline meetings, forecasting meetings, he'd be saying to the salesperson, "Now this deal here, when's it going to close and how big is it? Okay, what can you do to make sure it closes on that time? Blah 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 blah." And so I took him aside and said, "You're going to," and what was happening, it was driving the behavior of the salesperson to spend time with the customer saying, "How big's this deal? And when are you going to get the order? When am I going to get the order?" Right? All the wrong behavior. They weren't helping the customer at all. It was all about them. So he said, "Let's just change this around. Now think about all the questions you need to ask to understand when the deal's going to come in, rather than asking the question, when is the deal coming in?" And then there's all sorts of questions that then they can go back and start asking the customer, that's helping the customer think through the buying journey, rather than telling them what I need to know for my own needs. He started doing that with all his salespeople, and we got it becoming habitual. It really made a massive difference. The salespeople behavior in front of the client changed dramatically.
And I think that's one of the things that it's one of the easiest things for any leader to do, any manager to do, but it's something that we most overlook is that, people, again, our people look at us as role models and they emulate what we do. I mean, after all, John got to be the VP of sales because he was pretty good. Well, let me watch what John does and I'll do that with my customers. And if John's doing the wrong thing, then we're going to do the wrong thing with our customers. But if John's setting, asking questions, getting people to think, being collaborative. And the other thing too is caring. If John cares about his people, that's going to get me as a salesperson to start modeling the same behaviors. And guess what? If I start caring about my customers, magic happens.
The words, how do you feel about that, is, I think, the most powerful words in coaching.
Absolutely.
And ask a question, how'd you go with the client there? What happened? What didn't happen? And they say, oh, well, the client, how do you feel about that? And now you're really getting to the guts and helping that person think through what they're doing and how they can do it different.
Yeah. No, it's so simple and intuitively obvious, but somehow we miss that. And I think we get so caught up in, hitting the numbers and, reporting to our bosses and so on and so forth. And we managers are overwhelmed, our people are overwhelmed. But if we go back to some of these basic, simple principles, it's amazing how much of an impact they have on our business results.
And you build sustainable change. All your people start behaving the right way, and suddenly you start sustainability and in growth and revenue, sales and revenue happens through coaching.
And it goes back to the old parable: is give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a person to fish and they'll eat all their lives. And that's what we're trying to do in coaching.
Great way to finish that discussion. To me, coaching's so important, and we've got to find the time to do it. We've got to learn how to do it properly. And you had some great suggestions to help us do that, Dave. Thank you.
It's such a pleasure. Thank you, John.